Hey there, Legion, this is Hadrian. Thank you for being here. Let's play some more Civilization 6 Rise and Fall in our Strategy School series. This episode is going to focus primarily on technologies and civics, and specifically how the science per turn and culture per turn yields that we just unlocked factor into managing technologies and civics. Because managing these resources in particular is just as important as managing the food and production per city that I talked about in the first episode of this series. So what are technologies, what are civics, and why are they more important? I would actually say it's more important than food and production because you can bolster both food and production in a myriad of ways by properly looking after your research and civics options, and you can stay ahead of your opponents by doing so. So technology, first of all, is every advancement your civilization can make that kind of relates to engineering, military advancement, productivity advancement, better buildings. I'm not saying that there are no better buildings unlocked in the civics tree. There certainly are. But if it relates to just the productivity of your society and the betterment of your technology, it's fairly intuitive. It's the technology level of your society. Then it's going to be in the technology tree. And it used to be in Civilization 5 and before that everything, civic or not, was in the technology tree. So if it was technology related and had even something a little bit civic-like, it would be in the tech tree still. In Civ 6, there is actually, and you may have heard this if you're a Civ veteran, but you haven't played Civ 6 yet, you probably have heard, given that it's been a few years since the game came out when I'm recording this. But if you haven't, there is now a civics tree in the same way that there's a tech tree, and you can research a civic at the same time as you're researching a technology, and they run concurrently for the entire game. So it's a big change from convention in Civilization 6. And there are a few things that are unique to the civics tree as well, specifically the fact that almost every civic unlocks policies. And the policies, actually, I think it's every civic that does. I would be hard-pressed to find one that doesn't have a policy attached to it. Okay, this one doesn't. But policies are for governments in Civilization 6. Now, government is not new to Civilization, but in Civilization 6, basically you have a certain number of slots depending on what government type you have. Early on, there's just going to be a government called a chiefdom, which we're going to unlock in 10 turns when Code of Laws finishes. And we'll have one military slot, that's the red, and one economic slot, that's the gold. Which means, as you might guess, we're going to have two choices of what we want to put in each slot. You can pick one card for each. Eventually, when you unlock better governments, and there are ways to unlock individual slots as well, on top of unlocking more slots through better governments, you can add more policies. You can change existing policies. A lot of policies become obsolete as you advance through the eras. But the point is, you use policies to customize your playthroughs of Civilization 6 on the fly. Every time you finish a civic project, you can, for free, swap out policies as much as you like. You can completely change your government type or your policy selections. If you are in the middle of a project, you can still change them, but you just have to pay a certain amount of gold. And the more you do it, the more expensive it'll become. You can customize your civilization throughout the game in response to threats, in response to advantages, in response to disadvantages, and really keep your finger on the pulse of what is going to be best for you in managing your resources and getting ahead of your opponents. It's a really fun way to continually switch up how you play Civilization 6. And it can depend on who you're playing as, it can depend on who you're playing against, and it's just generally a lot of fun. I'm going to go into the research tree here to talk a little bit more about, or the technology tree, I should say, to talk a little bit more about what you see when you pull one of these up. It's very similar, depending on, it doesn't matter which one you're looking at, it's obviously a very similar format, but the same kind of information is presented to you. And I want to talk about the options that I have to choose for my technology and why I'm choosing each one. So I can filter the tree by what type of benefit I would like to get from the choice. So if I wanted to go with food, I could, have it take away options that are not food related. So if this is a little overwhelming, but you say, well, I know I want to use my technology to help me with food right now because I seem to be struggling with food, you can do that. And the game will help you out in that way. You can search if you'd like as well. You can also show or hide this key. I'll leave it up just for your benefit because these icons can help you understand what you're looking at as we go through here. But I have 5 choices of technology to go from, which you can also see just by pulling up the choose research dialog here. There's 5 options, some of which are more expensive than others. Why is that? Just position on the tree. This is the average position kind of where we are with technology. In other words, we're at the very beginning. So because we haven't researched anything yet, the closest technologies to our position are cheapest. The farthest ones away, the farthest one down the tree are most expensive. The farthest ones behind us, if there were technologies behind us, would be cheapest. So if we had researched, say, all of these, but we were not a civilization that really needed harbor districts, so we hadn't researched celestial navigation, but we had all the rest of the classical era technologies, then celestial navigation would be cheaper. So it's relative cost to the other technologies that you've researched. It's dynamic and constantly changing based on the choices that you make. So these are a little bit more expensive given that they are in the next column from our starting 3 techs. And these starting techs are unique compared to the rest. Specifically, this one is food related, this one is production related, this one is, well, I mean, I'm not saying none of the others have these relationships, but these are very specific for what type of yield you want to push early on. Pottery will give you the granary building for your city center, give you additional food, 2 more housing, and the ability to harvest wheat and rice. What is harvesting? Harvesting actually means you can take a bonus resource off the map permanently. You say, I don't want that wheat there anymore. I started with 20 wheat near my city. You'll never start with that many wheat near your city. But let's say you have a lot of wheat near your city and you're like, I only need 2. Let me harvest the rest. You get a lump sum. Rather than having to wait for food to come in turn by turn, you get a huge chunk of food all at once to help your city grow instantly by harvesting a wheat or rice tile. So if you want to go for a food focus as your civilization early on, it's different from a food focus for a city where you're telling your citizens to focus on food tiles. That's completely different terminology. But if you would like to, I don't know, center your attention on food production early on, you can choose pottery and have that granary building available to you in just 7 turns. Or maybe sooner if you do something that helps you gain more science more quickly. Animal husbandry is kind of a mix between food and production because all animal husbandry tiles, whether it's sheep, horses, or cows, actually provide food and production. But you can build pasture on top of those types, or if you have some deer out in the woods, you can build camps. Elephants also are a luxury resource that can use camps. And then you can harvest cattle and sheep in the same way you can harvest wheat and rice and get a food and production bonus from that. Mining finally is production focused. Mines can be built on top of hills, and quarries can be built, or improvements, by the way. All of these are improvements. They're not buildings. You would send a builder out and actually improve tiles. So you make tiles permanently better. The improvements can get pillaged, but they can be repaired. They have to be physically removed, which is different from pillaging in order to actually delete them and replace them with something else. So once they're there, they're permanent. They just might get damaged from time to time. And the improvements will improve the tile. As you can see, there's certain improvements that happen throughout the ages as technologies get better and better. Like, for instance, quarry, once rocketry technology is available at the end of the tech tree, these will start providing more production. But notice also that these lower tile appeal. So certain types of improvements your residents won't necessarily like having nearby. We'll talk about appeal much later on. That's a more detailed aspect of city management, but that's a good thing to know early on. You might not always want to have your mines like right next to your cities. It's good to think about how tile appeal factors into city construction. Again, it's all about playing the map. But you can chop down woods as well with the mining technology. There's also the quarry improvement for the stone we have nearby. But chopping down woods, that's not even a bonus resource. That's just trees, like on this tile right here. And by chopping these down, as long as a city owns this tile, that city will get a one-time production boost. Once you've researched bronze working, you'll be able to chop down rainforest too, which gives you food and production. And again, it just kind of funnels a huge chunk of production rather than having to wait for it to come in turn by turn into the project that you're currently working on in that city. It'll help you train a unit, it'll help you build a building, help you finish a wonder that much faster by chopping down woods. Pretty good stuff. And you can harvest copper as well. So those are the 3 basic options you can begin with. There's also 2 up here that are, again, a little bit more expensive, but you can go for sailing if you want the galley, fishing boats, and of course the ability for builders to embark so they can go build the fishing boat improvement. And then finally, there's astrology and the Holy Site District. Now, districts are new to Civilization 6, and we will focus an entire episode on these later. Districts, as you can see, actually from this tooltip, get bonuses based on where they're placed. It's about looking at the map and thinking about where is the best spot for me to unpack this city and build the next section of it, because unstacking the cities really is what it was called before Civilization 6 came out. It's a huge component of Civilization 6's game design. You're no longer thinking about just putting one city tile down and that's your city. You have to build districts to continue to improve the city. Otherwise, it's not going to be that great of a city. And holy sites are faith-centric districts, obviously. They provide great profit points per turn. Talk about that in just a bit, actually. I think the Great Person episode, I don't have it right in front of me right now, but it's going to be within the next few. But that will help you towards a religion. And if you want to go for a religion early on, which I almost always recommend, because it helps you customize your civilization from the get-go with more interesting ways. In addition to the government stuff I already talked about, you should probably go for astrology right away. if for no other reason, then it gives you access to Stonehenge, which if you can build it, we could build Stonehenge in our city if we wanted to. I'm not going to go too wonder crazy with this particular series, by the way, just as a side note, because I think if I went too wonder happy, which I tend to do in my Civ series, but if I did it with this series, it would really skew the playthrough and we'd have a lot of unfair advantages, and I don't want to do that. This is a tutorial. But the Stonehenge would give us an instant great profit and allow us to found a religion right away, which is pretty cool, and give us a faith bonus just for building it that would always be there for that tile, which is nice. And the option, of course, to build a shrine once the holy site is done, which boosts the faith and great profit point output of the holy site. So that's going to be my choice because I want to go for a religion, not only for tutorial purposes, but because I like to go for religion early on. And having that additional ability to give my civilization more bonuses is just something I can't pass up. So we're going to go for astrology. It's going to take 13 turns. Really quickly, I will show you how the game figures this out, because it also applies to production, which we're going to talk about in just a moment as well. And then I want to talk about some more detailed features of the tech in Civics trees, especially what's new to Civilization 6, because there are a few more things that are new and cool. But first of all, when you're looking at, the fact that this is going to take 13 turns, or if I go to choose production in Uruk and the fact that the monument is going to take 7 turns, how does the game know that? Where's that coming from? Well, Uruk, as you can see down here, you can see all of its city-specific yields, and it is producing 6.3 production. 4 from work tiles, so 2 from there, 2 from there. 2 from the palace, and then it's getting a slight bonus because the city's happy. We'll talk about amenities later on in the series, but that's actually affecting all of my yields right now that aren't food-related. So I'm just getting the 4 food from the tiles, but everything else is getting a bonus, hence the decimal points that you're seeing. It's not just the +2 science, +1 culture from the palace, it's 2.6, 1.3. And in terms of production, that's where the 0.3 is coming from, is the additional amenities bonus. And then finally, the science bonus as well. I want you to see this. We're getting 0.5 from the population. Every citizen in my city is 0.5 science and 0.2 culture. So that's an additional little bonus for science in particular. We're not generating any faith at the moment, which makes me sad. But for production, since we're putting out 6.3 per turn, well, the monument, notice, is look at the very bottom of the tooltip, 40 production project. So 6 times 6 turns is just shy of that number, but 6 times 7, there you go. So 7 turns is how long the monument's going to take to build. And we'll talk more about these options in just a second. But it works the exact same way for research and civics projects in general. So astrology is a 33 science project. If we look at pottery, that's a 16 science project. It's going to take 7 turns because we're putting out 2.6 science per turn. That is the point at which we would be 16.0 or higher, is at the 7 turn mark. So astrology is going to take us 13 turns. We might find a way to shave it down before that point. We'll see, but that's how that works, just in case you were curious. Most yields in Civilization 6, Gold and Faith, are a little bit less associated with this, way of going about things. But most yields in Civilization 6 contribute toward a target amount of that yield that you're trying to earn so that cities can grow, so that buildings are finished, so that technologies and civics are obtained. And units are trained, for that matter, by the way. So if you know what that number is, it can be easy to manage, how much production you want to put towards a certain thing. If you want to stop building something in any given moment, anything that you're researching or building, you can stop and switch away from and then switch back to and pick up where you left off, which is nice. But anyway, going back to the technology tree, we might even do that at some point later on. There is a strategy you can follow with regards to what I'm about to explain that actually kind of incentivizes stepping away from technologies before they're done. So let me explain one of the new features that's been added in Civilization 6, and that is the boost system. Notice that under every tech and every civic, except for the first ones, there are boost options. So under astrology, it says, find a natural wonder. And there's this little highlighted portion here. And you might be thinking, wait, does that mean that if you find a natural wonder, you're going to get all of that instantly? Yup, that's exactly what it means, actually. And what that means is that you can, basically what the game is trying to say is that, if you found a natural wonder, it's inspiring to your civilization and it makes them more inclined towards astrology. If you found a city on the coast, your civilization is not going to take as long to figure out how to sail because they have a coastal city, so they have that inspiration. It's actually called a eureka for science and an inspiration for civics. That's the literal terminology the game will use, so you'll see it sometimes in the interface. If it's mentioning Eureka's, it will have a blue arrow indicating that it's a science boost. Inspirations will have a purple arrow indicating a culture boost. But they all work in the same way, and they give you 40%, sometimes 50% if you have certain bonuses, of the research progress instantly. So I mentioned a certain strategy you can use if you are more comfortable with the system and you're playing at a slightly more advanced level. If, let's say you are researching sailing, and you're ready to move on to another technology because you're noticing a threat from some other direction, and you want to make sure you have, say, archers. So you want to move on to archery research as soon as you can. If you've put in, say, that much research into sailing, so you've done science per turn, you've put in, this is what, a 33 science project, so you've put in 2/3 of that, let's say. You've got 22 science done in this. You could cut yourself off right there and move on to another technology, and then as soon as you founded a city on the coast, guess what would happen? Boom, it would finish. The boost is not dependent on whether or not you're working on the technology. So you can actually, and this is a widely known tactic, I'm not trying to impart something that's, not been pretty widely shared, but for new players, in case you've missed it, that is one of the key ways that you can really get ahead. Developers have even used this trick on live streams to advertise, patch content and expansion content. It's pretty cool. So that's one trick that you can use if you really want to move rapidly down the tech tree and kind of take advantage of the boost system. You don't have to wait to research through every tech. If you know you're going to found a city on the coast within a couple of turns, especially in fewer turns than it's going to take for you to finish it naturally through research, stop researching it and do something else. Invest that science per turn in something else, and you'll get ahead a little faster that way. So it's an interesting tactic to be aware of. A couple of more things to note before I jump in, and like I said, just do a few things with my turns here. We're going to go actually back into the tech tree, because I want to mention just the importance of thinking ahead when it comes to making decisions. How do you decide? I went for astrology and reasons for reasons that I explained. But how do you decide really what you want to go for first? If you're not going to be like me and you say, I don't want a religion first, I want to conquer people first. That's my number one priority. Religion can come later. Or I can let someone else's religion, come into my lands, and I can wield that one if I need to defend myself from another religion, that's threatening a religious victory, whatever. If you don't want to do that first, that's fine. You might be thinking, okay, well, what do I go for first? A lot of that comes down to looking ahead. And there's some tools that you can use to make that easy on yourself. First of all, obviously you'd go for mining first. If you don't see why, look at the 3 techs that follow mining immediately. You get ancient walls through masonry and the ability to build the battering ram, the pyramid's wonder, and you can harvest stone for production bonuses, one-time huge lump sum production bonuses. You get the encampment district and the barracks building, which gives additional production for your city and extra combat experience for all melee and ranged units. We'll see that more once I've built one. The iron strategic resource gets revealed on the map. And you can also chop down rainforest, like I mentioned, and you get the spearman unit. And then the wheel, check this out, this is going to be amazing in my capital city. Rice and wheat resources gain +1 food each. The city must be adjacent to a river though, but it is. So we are going to get a lot of extra food in our capital city, and we get the +1 food, +1 production regardless. And then the heavy chariot. We don't care about the heavy chariot as much because we're Gilgamesh and we have war carts, but the point is, you would go for mining first, not astrology, because it's going to give you the military options as soon as possible. And also maybe mining and animal husbandry so that you can have the archer sooner than later. But one key thing to think of is, when are you going to go for writing? Because this is your campus district and your library building. These are how you really start boosting your science output, which helps you move down the entire tree faster. So you don't want to neglect pottery for too long, even if you do have a military focus or a religious focus. And that will factor into some of my coming decisions as well. You know what? I closed it, but there's one more thing I want to show you. If you know for a fact that you want to go for one technology as soon as possible, you can do this. You can just click, I want mathematics as soon as possible, and it'll research everything it needs to get you straight there. If you don't like the order in which it does something, let me show you, for instance, if I go for machinery, notice how it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but you want it to go another way. You can go 1, hold down shift, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I was just holding down shift and clicking there, and you can queue things up as much as you like. I do not recommend going to queue happy. I don't recommend absolutely going nuts and having a long queue in your technology and civics options, because if you haven't noticed, Civilization 6 is a game about making active decisions, and your ability to think about what choice you need to make based on the demands of the moment is important. And so when you have a long queue going, it can get kind of out of sight, out of mind. You don't even think about it because the game is not prompting you anymore, especially if you're playing alone, you're playing kind of quickly, and before you know it, you queued a bunch of stuff up because you were excited about something 20 turns ago, someone declared war on you, you've changed your entire approach because you're trying not to die, And you could really be making better decisions if you were actively deciding each time you finished a technology what the next best thing to look at is. So just be mindful of queuing, but know that that is a definite possibility when it comes to which decisions you want to make and which technologies you want to go for, or civics you want to go for. So that's that for technologies and civics. I think that's more than enough detail to start. Let's jump in here with Uruk. I went over a bit about why these production costs are as they are, but we have several options, of course. I could go for the monument, which would take 7 turns. Provides +1 loyalty per turn to this city. We'll talk about loyalty. It's probably going to get its own episode. That's a new rise and fall system that has thrown some people off, but once you understand it, it works very straightforwardly. If the city has already has maximum loyalty, which Uruk does, I can point to this little icon here with the green arrow, and it's the civilization icon. Shows I have full loyalty. We get an additional 1 culture. So this is actually a 2 culture building, which would put me up to 2 or 3.3 culture per turn if we went ahead and built that. I could do a builder, which I'm going to need to do as soon as possible so I can improve these tiles, especially improve this wheat tile. I can already build a farm tile with the builder. I don't have to research anything for that. That is the point at which we already kind of exist in Civilization 6. If you remember Civilization 5, you start with the technology, I believe, for farming in Civilization 5. It's just given to you. So the same kind of theme applies here. You figured out how to farm, you can automatically farm these tiles and the rice tile as well to improve them and get better food output. So it'll go up to 3 food output and 4 food output there if we use a builder on those tiles. Scout, probably what I'm going to go for. Notice the game is recommending a few things to me as well. Or I can go with any of these military units. Slingers are a good thing to build early on because of one of the first boosts that you can get, which is killing a unit with a slinger. Gives you a boost towards archery. But I will go ahead and go for a scout first for 2 reasons. Number 1, first of all, just want to look around. I want to find what are called goody huts that give me access to just additional bonuses that make the game more interesting and give me more early on. Maybe gold, maybe faith, extra units, all kinds of things can pop out of goody huts. They're called tribal villages, but the community affectionately refers to them as goody huts. So you'll hear that a lot in YouTube and streamer playthroughs. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is the unit that you meet other civilizations with influences their predisposition towards you. If I meet a neighbor with this warrior, because I'm scouting around with a warrior everywhere, they're going to be a little bit more hostile towards me because I'm marching around with a warrior exploring the world. But if I use a scout, that's a little bit of a different situation, given that the scout is a bit more neutral and will, be more friendly, I guess, when they meet other civilizations. So you're likely to have better diplomatic interactions with them. So this warrior, I'm going to go ahead and send them onto this hill tile so that they can maybe see a little bit farther. Okay, good. So he was able to see all the way to these next hills. He can't see beyond the hills, but because he's standing on the hill tile, he has a little bit more visibility. Trees are blocking me from seeing through the fog of war that direction. That's fine. We have 4 turns until the scout's done, 5 turns until the city grows. Again, changing focuses is not going to change that right now. The only thing that would change is if I did a food ignorance order, and the issue there is that would only slow down growth. There's no point right now in messing with these, or even in going in and managing the city directly, which you can do. You can tell the city which tiles you want it to work, but the second you unlock it, the focus will take over again. So the lock tile means it's following your orders, but notice I unlocked it and boom, it switched back on its own to the best tile, given what it's currently supposed to be doing, which is an unfocused, optimal collection of resources in Uruk. So we've got 4 turns till the scout's done, 5 turns until we have a new population in Uruk. By the way, every citizen in the game, let me show you very quickly. We'll go into more detail on this later, but just so you can see it. Food consumption is -2 right now. It'll be -4 in a second because we'll have an additional citizen. So growth is going to slow down a good bit because the second citizen coming in will pretty much equalize this right here. But food per turn right now, well, actually it won't necessarily because we'll have another citizen and they might be working a food tile to bring in more food. But the point is, each 1 citizen consumes 2 food. So multiply that number by 2 to get your food consumption. And we are, of course, producing 4 food per turn in Uruk. All right, I'm going to keep moving this direction. Okay, there's a goody hut. And we'll be able to go straight to it because we've got flatlands between us and that location. Notice I'm moving 1 tile at a time, just for caution's sake. Oh, interesting. The game actually gave me a free scout. I'm 2 turns away from finishing my other scout. I think I will just keep... Let's move him on top of this hill so he has a little bit more... Yeah, a little bit of visibility there. There's even more oranges down here. That's very nice. We're surrounded by oranges. Notice, by the way, when we cleared the tribal village, we got a historic moment. This is new to Rise and Fall. Villagers bring gifts as they join our civilization, and we got 1 era score for clearing that particular tribal village. All right, so let's go ahead and, I don't know, do I want to put you on the... Up here? Oh, hello. Okay, you're close. Okay, so I wasn't expecting to meet someone, but apparently he's right next to us. Rome is like very close to our capital, so this is going to be an interesting beginning. I like this a lot. Every time that you meet a leader in Civilization 6, you pretty much have the option when you're interacting with them. There's generally 2 options, sometimes more than 2, but generally 2. One which kind of allows you to be nice, and one in which you're kind of a dick. I mean, sorry to be crass, but that's pretty much the way it is in Civ 6. So you can, as you can see, you can say it's an honor to meet you, or you can say I'm too busy to stay in chat. I'm going to say it's an honor to meet Trajan. The Empire, of course, has a city nearby. Will you come see and be conquered by its people? That's a Latin joke. Okay, we can say we would love to sample your hospitality, and this will automatically give us visibility of Rome. If his scout had found us, it would be the other way around. We'd be giving his visibility. So let's sample his hospitality. Your knowledge of writing has advanced considerably, and yeah, wow, here's Rome. Okay, so we got a boost there. So that's a good example of the Eureka system. We got a boost towards writing because we met another civilization. So now we are going to have even more incentive to move towards that quickly. Let's move you here. Just keep looking around and... Okay, there's our first strategic resource, and that is the moment that I was looking for to end this episode. And perfect, because we're about 26 minutes in. Oh my gosh. Truth be told, I have tried multiple times to really get this explanation to a point that I'm happy about. And rather than like editing it and going crazy with it, I've just really practiced it and tried through multiple attempts of recording, and I'm fairly happy with this episode. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this one here. In the next one, like I said, we're going to talk about resource types, is probably going to be considerably shorter. I have to say that technologies and civics were a really important topic. If you have questions, please ask them. I want to make sure that we cover all the detail, and I can talk about it in future episodes, or at least in the comments with you. But the next one will probably be somewhat more straightforward and a little bit shorter, but we'll talk about resource types and then maybe deal more. I don't even know that we'll necessarily make any moves in that episode, so it could be a good bit shorter. But then we will move on towards more diplomatic interactions that we can have with Trajan before we leave this turn. And then we will probably encounter some barbarians soon, so we'll have to talk about that as well. But I've got some topics planned out in order still that I want to go for, so we're going to try and stick to that if no other civilizations interrupt me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this one, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to follow along. New episodes are coming out every day, usually at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, unless I really spend a long time perfecting them like I did the first 2. Comments are always welcome. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time.